is up, fight fans? I am Jason Burgos, and on this edition of Back Talk, I'm joined by one of the best coaches in all of the MMA game. He's the GM and top coach at the famed Xtreme Couture, where he works with amazing talents like Joseph Benavidez, recently Aljamain Sterling, Dan Ige, and of course Francis Ngannou, among many others. He joins me from quarantine in Vegas as he prepares to coach again at another UFC Vegas card. And UFC pay-per-view this time, and that is the one and only MMA Junkie 2020 co-coach of the year, and Mr. Eric Nicksick. Senor Nicksick. Thanks for so much of the time tonight.
My pleasure, bro. That's quite the intro, man. That's like a Bruce Buffer intro right
now. My pleasure. All super well earned. All the accolades. That's just the tip of the iceberg, but so many questions for you, a lot of things. So I know you're busy. I don't want to take up too much time. Now, get right into you work with so many different fighters. You mentioned some. I mentioned so. I want to talk to about a few of them. The first one being Joe Benavidez that I just mentioned. To me, Joe's style in fights is always super sound, technical. He doesn't get wild in there. Yet, to my non-expert eye, it felt like when he went in his last fight against Askarov, he in some ways was away from his normal. Like he was throwing bomb haymakers. Part of me wondered if being far out from a title contention, which I talked to him about a few weeks before that, that maybe he was going in there for the fun of it and trying to put on, get a highlight finish or something. Like maybe not having the same kind of fear of losing that was maybe helpful, when he was on a title hunt. Am I way off base? Joe didn't get away from the plan and ways, or is there something a little bit to that? Maybe he strayed away from his tried and true form.
Yeah, to Joe's own admission, Joe's kind of mentioned that to us as the coaching staff, that he just didn't really execute what he really wanted to do. He said he felt a little flat in there, and I think that's kind of what people saw. But we didn't see that at all from him during fight week. Fight week, he looked amazing. To be quite honest with you, I thought Joe was going to go out and put on a clinic. Yeah. I mean, he looked amazing all fight week. And, he's like, man, I just didn't feel like I was really in there at the time. And, unfortunately, I think that's kind of where he's at in his career. And, I just hope that he's going to take some time off and evaluate what he wants to do, because, Joe Benavidez is one of the best to ever do it in any division, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
And, I love the guy to death. He's one of my favorite individuals in the world. I don't want to see him go out there and just force something if he's not really loving the sport the way he once did. So, yeah, I mean, he just said he just felt a little flat that night.
Now, I want to talk about Aljamain Sterling. I'm not going to ask him about having the bell. Should, a DQ lead to title changes? I wanted to first talk more about him looking very tired in the fourth round in that fight with Yan. In a fight that even Ray Longo kind of admitted that he was probably losing at that point. In his outstanding run to this title shot, he employed like a style that was high on output, energy. It felt like a striking wave that would come at opponents, get them off balance, and then crash on the shore with a takedown. Two of those wins ended early. None of them went to 5 rounds. But with Yan stuffing takedowns, well, it felt like that high energy style wasn't as feasible if there weren't takedowns, maybe rest periods in terms of being on top. For the likely rematch, do things need to be tweaked in terms of output and come with more measured approach to conserve energy? Or am I wrong? And it's more about tweaking like the variety of takedowns, the level changes, and things like that.
No, that's a great observation, but yes, you're absolutely right. I think there's a lot of things that need to change, and I feel like he set such a high pace in his sparring rounds, and he sparred some great training partners from Xtreme Couture and also from Serra Longo, but I don't think those guys are going to be near the level of experience and style of Petr Yan. So I think a little bit of that might have been just a false sense of security, knowing that he could push that type of pace, but not necessarily to that level either. And then you're absolutely right. Our places of rest were on topside half guard or against the cage with an underhook, or places that we knew we had good positions that we were able to rest in. I also feel like Aljamain was forcing some of the takedowns that weren't necessarily an issue. He was trying to shoot spots that weren't really available for him, and that was actually aesthetically looking like he was more tired. So there's a lot of things I think that we took from that fight that we obviously want to get better at. But, at the end of the day, I think that we kind of saw the blueprint, what we're capable of doing, and then some of those tweaks I think you'll see in that rematch.
A big story the week after the fight was like this public falling out between Aljo and his longtime coach Matt Serra, where Serra felt pushed out before this fight. They have since reconciled, but what were your thoughts on that kind of stuff when it came out? Were you caught off guard and didn't know that's what happened? Did you feel like some guilt, wondering, oh, did he push me out, push him out because I was here, I didn't even know about it? And have you been in a spot like there where you have a fighter like we talked about, you built from the ground up from the beginning, and you have that deep bond, but they just kind of decide to go elsewhere with their training?
Well, yeah, first of all, I felt awful for Matt because I definitely empathize with his situation. When Aljamain sat and talked to me when he moved to Vegas, that was brought up. He just said, hey, this is what I plan on doing. I plan on bringing Serra and Longo, and they're going to be in the corner, but are you comfortable with running my camp until they get here? Mm-hmm. So my understanding was I was just going to help bridge the gap between Vegas and Long Island all the way up until fight night. And he also had some things that he had discussed to me about just like who was going to be in his corner. And I was always under the assumption that Matt was going to be there, all the way to the point where I actually did an interview with Matt and Jim Norton. And I was like, all right, coach, I'll see you in a few weeks. And he's like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to be coming out, and that caught me off guard too. So again, like that's between Matt and Aljamain. I don't know what conversations that were to be had in that time, but from my standpoint, yes, I would feel slighted if I was Matt. And when I heard that interview by Matt after the fact, I immediately got a hold of Matt, and I wanted to make sure he wasn't mad at me. Like I had nothing to do with it, And Matt was very apologetic to me too. He was like, "Man, I'm sorry if you felt like I was trying to be rude and out you or anything like that. That wasn't the case." But I really truly felt awful for Matt. I could imagine how he would have felt being involved in a man's career for 9 years and all the way to the title point and not to be in his corner. To be very fair, I was happy with being the third and taking the step back and just watching the show, or even not even being in the corner. It didn't really matter to me one bit. I just wanted what was best for Aljo and the team. So yeah, I'm glad those guys got to work it out. Hopefully that they're both on an understanding of what went on. I know some of the things that Aljamain was concerned about with those guys traveling with the COVID era.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So that's kind of what I alluded it to. I didn't think there was any issues other than hearing it till after the fact. So when he wasn't there, I was like, oh, well, maybe Matt didn't want to come because of, I know he had COVID, the gym and all these other things. So, again, like it really wasn't up to me, and I just kind of stayed out of it. But I was definitely empathetic to Matt's situation.
Now, speaking kind of the idea of a cornerman and stuff like that, I want to, of course, go to the biggest fights and rematches of 2021. Your charged Francis Ngannou will be getting a second crack at the heavyweight title against Stipe Miocic. First, in a recent interview, Francis, maybe about 2 weeks ago or so, he talked about working with Kamaru Usman for this, and that he would actually, Kamaru will be in his corner for the fight. I don't know if that's still the plan or not, but on the surface, I am sure some will wonder, how the heck can a welterweight, even the best in the world, help a massive heavyweight for his fight? Talk to me about Usman, what he's brought to the training and is expected to bring in the corner on fight night.
Well, I think people are overlooking the fact that it's not Usman necessarily coming in to help out with the wrestling. I think people don't really understand that. Usman brings an element to the corner that is more along the lines of understanding what a championship fight looks like. He's been there before. He understands what fight week looks like. He kind of is a brother to Francis, and that there's a comfort level there. So I think people are looking into this as like, oh, Usman's coming in to help the wrestling. Of course, he's always going to be a resource for all of us, no matter what. But really, it's more that comfort level of what Francis wants in his corner. There's a reason why he has Markel Martin in his corner. It's his manager. Markel makes him feel comfortable. It's not, Markel's going to go out there and tell him what to do in round 3. He wants people that surround him that make him feel good. So, and Kamaru is one of those guys. So I think people were kind of looking into that a little too deep. And, he didn't come out and all of a sudden, like, we're just calling in that, Randy Couture, he's going to come in and run the corner. No, it's nothing like that, man. It's just, it's honestly, Francis puts good people around her that make him feel comfortable, and the guys that really care about him the most. And, Kamaru brings a different element in understanding what a championship fight week looks like.
Now, that first fight, to me really kind of showcased Stipe's fight IQ, at least to me. And I read the article with MMA Fighting you did that you watching it every night and stuff like that, and it's become an addiction. Stipe fought really smart. It wasn't necessarily flashy or entertaining, so to speak, but it was a smart fight within the tools he has, not letting Francis play to his strengths. There was a good bit of grappling, keeping Francis down while also tiring him out. Are things like cardio, wrestling, stuff that can be improved a great deal at this point in a career, or it's less about wholesale changes there and more about mental things, like you talked about with Kamaru, making him more comfortable and stuff like that? Don't let the moment get to you. Fight smart and measured, because all Francis has to do is touch you. I mean, he has the power that he can floor an elephant. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, I think both of them are important, and I think sound mind and body and spirit and all that stuff is very important. But we obviously saw the issues in the cardio and the wrestling, and that's to Francis's own admission, and those are the things that he's really doubled down and wanted to work on. Of course, we can sit and talk about it all day, and it's until we show it and prove it that there's always going to be naysayers and doubters. But I know he's been putting in the work and doing all those right things. But for us, we just knew we had things we wanted to improve on the whole facet of our MMA skill set. If we keep focusing just on the striking department, he's not going to get but a little, like 1% better a year.
Yeah.
But if you could imagine of us working on everything else, his game's going to jump exponentially in those other areas and catch up to where he's at with the striking department. So. It's a scary sight. Let me tell you, when Francis gets on top of you and he starts ground and pounding and elbowing guys, it's a different feel.
Educate me and educate the people that listen to and watch this, because they're from the outside, not an expert like you, not a fighter. They'll think, oh, okay, he's got to work on his cardio and stuff like that, so maybe he'll do more strength training related things and the bike and road work and stuff like that. Is it that, or is it more technical thing? Is it just getting your technique right so you don't overexert in positions you really shouldn't? Which is it? Is it technical? Is it also that extra cardio stuff? Like, how do you what's one way you fix that?
It's both, but to be honest with you, I think it's actually doing the spot that gets you in trouble. So wrestle, get your ass in there, and there's nothing that's going to supplement your cardio more than actually wrestling.
Okay.
So people can run on the street as much as they want, but if you have a guy on your legs and trying to take you down, and then they take you down, and then you get back up, and they take you down again, and you get back up, you're pretty freaking tired.
Yeah.
So that's to me the most important thing is if you're going to train for a marathon or you're going to train to swim a long distance, you got to get your ass in the water and swim. There's nothing else to take that measurables than actually doing it. So our program in Xtreme Couture, we run practices where, one day Mondays might be tailored to more grappling heavy days, but we try to keep everything MMA oriented. So no matter what practices you're doing, you're going to be involving yourself in some wrestling and grappling no matter what. So, the system at hand, and then obviously leaning on the PI and those guys having a deeper concept of what they want to do with Francis is important. And then, all the little things too, like the Sicko Saturdays and the other things that we've added in. So, it's almost like you just got to kind of look at that boogeyman in the face, man. You have to go and conquer that bitch.
Now, last question. You are very active on your Instagram and post various pictures with fighters, training, stuff like that. But without a doubt, a lot is with Francis and this serious bond you seem to have with him. He's this one large built man in like a picture for what looks like a get together for your father's birthday. You've got these adorable pictures with him and your son looking like something out of the movie Iron Giant. Have you developed a bond with him that is unlike many others you have with your fighters? And does it add a big weight to this fight? Is it the reason why you're watching that rematch every single day, driving the wife crazy? Because of course you want to win this as a coach, as a competitor yourself, but you really want to get it for him because the man absolutely deserves it.
Yeah, I take a special deep interest with all my fighters, and I feel like we all have these special bonds, whether it's Dan Ige, Brad Tavares, or Jeremy Kennedy and Francis. Especially Francis and I grew very close during the pandemic. He became part of my family, and my kids love him, my wife loves him just as much as I do. But what's important for me, Jason, is that the time that I take away from my family, they're never going to get that time back. So it's important for them to understand who gets my time, right? And guys like Francis that get my time opposed to them, that they understand that what our dream is, what his dream is, and they also become important factors in his life as well. So, when I have to go away for a couple of days, or I go do something, or I'm in quarantine, and it's like, well, it's for Francis, then, you kind of get a pass because he's part of that family now, and,
Yeah.
it's important for all of us. So, the kids love him, the wife loves him, and just like Dan or anybody else, man, they get 110% of my attention and my love and my passion. That to be quite honest with you, I know I'm an X's and O's guy, but I think my care and my attention to detail is what I think makes me the better coach than most people.
And friendship's fascinating because you can have friendships with any kind of people. So on the surface, you look at Eric Nicksick, American, I'm guessing, grew up in Las Vegas or that kind of. Then you look at Francis Ngannou, this guy that, Nigeria, goes to France. Like, what do you guys have in common? What were you guys doing during the pandemic that bonded you? I must know. I'm dying to know.
Yeah, to be quite honest with you, man, he's just a good human being, and I think I'm the same. And, he would always tell me that, like, I think it was after the Junior Dos Santos fight. Like, he was like, "Oh, I've been testing you, to make sure you're good." And I mean, my heart's always in the right place. So, him and I always hit it off. We've always gotten along very well. I think naturally Francis is going to be guarded to let people that he lets into his life because of the situations and scenarios that he's been in. So to be kind of in that inner circle with him, we're just close, man. And it's hard to say it. There's a lot of sweat equity that goes on those mats. A lot of blood, sweat, and tears that you pour in. And I think just understanding that I'll walk to hell and back with the guy, and he do the same for me. And that's kind of where our friendship blossoms.
I wanted to talk about your path that brought you to the doors of Xtreme Couture, because I have seen in some articles, social media posts that mention your background in football, but did you have a past in combat sports along with that? And how does this meteoric rise to being the GM, to being one of the top coaches, to superstar fighters happen from day one to now?
Yeah, I always had a little bit of a martial arts background, but nothing too extensive because of football. Football was always my main focus. And then once that football career was over for me, I think it kind of left a big void in my life that I really didn't know what else I wanted to do. But I knew that the biggest void that I think I felt was the camaraderie and the team aspect. And then, I kind of stumbled across Xtreme Couture with a mutual friend of mine. We heard Randy was opening up a gym, and we just so happened to drive by. It wasn't even open yet. And Randy was getting ready for Tim Sylvia. We kind of walked in and just asked around, and Randy's like, "Hey, we're not opening up for a couple months, but if you want to start coming in and training, some of our guys right now are here, and you're more than welcome." So, I would just come in and learn how to grapple and train with like Mike Pyle and Jay Heron and those guys, and essentially just got the crap kicked out of me for about a year, and then. Just over about a year and a half, I was offered a grappling coach position. I ran one practice a week, and then that one practice a week kind of started parlaying into more classes. I took over the kids program, ran a couple adult classes, and then was helping coach some of the pro fighters. In the meantime, I was going to school as a paramedic and tested for the fire department. That was my main focus and my main path I wanted to be on. And then it was about that same time the gym manager role position opened up at Xtreme Couture, and Randy took me out to dinner and just asked, is like, "Hey, man, is this something you'd be interested in doing?" And ironically, about the same time, I ran a couple calls on some children that were in distress, and some things that I just didn't want to see, I think, from a day-to-day basis. I had just had my first child, and I think life started to look different for me. And I started to see how, like, a lot of the guys that had been on the department for a long time had a lot of, alcohol problems, divorce problems, this, that, and I just kind of knew that I wanted to stay in something that I really was going to enjoy and love. And I doubled down on what I loved, and that was Xtreme Couture, and it worked out for me in the end, so that's kind of how I got my foot in the door.
In team sports, you often see coaches will have like a style of play and a philosophy they bring wherever they go, feeling they have this battle-tested program they know can be successful wherever and with whoever. And in MMA, certain coaches kind of have that too. Tyson Chartier, Sarah Longo, Tiger Schulman seem like they have a proven program that their fighters base their styles on. Do you have a specific style, philosophy you want your fighters to always have as a base and then build from there? Or do you want to have fighters who, that develop their own unique style, and you want to enhance the strengths for fights, secure the weaknesses so they're not exploited on fight night?
Well, that's actually a great question, Jason, and I think that you have to be able to adapt to both. So, I'm a system guy through my lineages through Team Quest, and Randy Couture and Dennis Davis, Robert Follis, the Dan Hendersons. So we have a specific style, I think, in the way we like to fight or train. But, it's also very important for me as a coach to adapt to the fighter. In mixed martial arts, the A is arts. And it's important that the fighter's able to maintain their creative control. You also have to coach to their skill set. So, my coaching ideology changed quite a bit when I got Uriah Hall. I understood Uriah Hall's style was very different than maybe the Team Quest style of fighting. So that helped me out a lot as a coach in understanding personnel like you would in football. My dad was a very good defensive coordinator, but he would run his defenses accordingly to who his roster personnel looked like.
Okay.
In high school, you didn't really have that choice. You couldn't recruit another guy to come in and be, your defensive tackle to fill that void and run a 3-4. So he would look at his talent pool and he would take the guys that he had and form a defense around their skill set. And I think a lot of that mentality from my dad kind of formulated the same mentality that I have in football is, I work with what talent that I have and try to build off of that. Dan Ige is a prime example. I got the kid coming up through the ranks, and he fought a particular style, and then we were able to add small little different skill sets to his game. And he's probably one of the guys that's been in the system the longest, and you can kind of point at him and see how he's worked out.
Do you find one is easier to do than the others? I would imagine if for a fighter that comes in like a big name, say Joseph Benavidez, or if Brandon Moreno sometimes comes in there and stuff like that, it would seem harder. Like they have their tendencies, they have their things they're so used to. But then again, maybe they're open-minded, they're moving around for a reason. And the other one, you're building from the ground up. Is one easier than the other?
It's a little bit of both, and like I like the fact that you can build guys up from the ground up, right? And I think that. You have that, they've been in your system, if you will, for a long time, and we have quite a few of those guys. And then you're right, like we get the Joseph Benavidez, who are already very established fighters. The one guy I work with a lot is Paul Felder. So Paul Felder has a specific style, and he does certain things. But my goal and my coaching with him is just to add different tools to his already extensive tool shed. If I can bring a couple things to light and help him in certain areas. That's really my main focus when you got a guy that's already kind of in that upper echelon of fighters, is just add just a little bit of things that they're already doing well.